Welcome to Jay Anything, the show about everything. I'm Jay, and if this is your first time on the channel, thanks for stopping by. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Now, let's talk about some things. Today I'm talking about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier Episode 3. But before we get into that episode, I want to give a brief recap of the first two, just to give some context for where we are. Episode 1 set the stage for everything going on. We get to see Sam's life and Bucky's life post-blip, and it kind of sets up where they are as characters, emotionally and mentally. Sam is trying to deal with some family issues, while Bucky is attending therapy, trying to work through his issues as the Winter Soldier. The two title characters don't actually meet in the first episode, but Episode 1 does end with the incident that brings them together, which is the announcement by the US government of a brand new Captain America, who, unbeknownst to Bucky or Sam, was the reason the government asked Sam to give back the shield that Captain America bequeathed to him at the end of Avengers Endgame. In Episode 2, Sam and Bucky finally do come together, and it's over this issue of the shield. We've got the Flag Smashers, which are a anarchist-esque type of group that doesn't want there to be any more borders between countries. They believe that life was better during the blip because there were less people. That meant that more resources went to fewer people. Now that there are all the people back who were blipped during Endgame, you've got scarcity of resources, scarcity of services, and all the people that were receiving help during the blip now are being left behind in service of helping the people that have returned get back to a normal life. Bucky introduces Sam in this episode to Isaiah Bradley, an important character in Marvel Universe history. He's the first African-American man to successfully take the Super Soldier Serum after Steve Rogers. Sam and Bucky meet the new Captain America, immediately don't get along, and we can tell there's going to be some conflict there at some point down the line. The end of Episode 2, we see Sam and Bucky agreeing begrudgingly to go and seek help from Baron Zemo, the villain in Captain America Civil War in 2016, who they know knows a lot of Hydra secrets. And Bucky believes that Hydra is somehow connected to the Flag Smashers and some of their members having the Super Soldier Serum in their blood. Now let's talk about this most recent third episode. Right at the beginning, we follow Bucky going to free Baron Zemo from his prison in Germany. He doesn't tell Sam he's going to do this, and it's actually a really fun inversion of speaking the plan out loud. And when that happens, it usually doesn't work out. In this case, it does though, and by the time Bucky is finished telling Sam about this hypothetical plan, Zemo walks through the door in a rather dramatic fashion. Zemo, with all of his criminal underground connections, takes Sam and Bucky to Madripoor, a location in the Marvel Universe that has yet to be seen in live action, but is excellently portrayed here in The Falcon and Winter Soldier as this lawless, essentially a pirate cove, where there doesn't seem to be many laws that are followed, and they don't allow extradition. So it's a perfect place for the scum and villainy, if you will, of the MCU to come together. While in Madripoor, Sam, Bucky, and Zemo end up crossing paths with Sharon Carter, who we last saw in Civil War in 2016 when she broke into a government facility to steal Cap's shield and Falcon's wing backpack, which put her on the most wanted list as a fugitive of the US government. She's been in Madripoor for the last few years, essentially, as she says in the episode, hustling. She has to get by any way she can, and if she steps foot back in the United States, she will be arrested and go straight to prison. With Sharon's help, Sam, Bucky, and Zemo are able to discover the location of a secret lab on Madripoor owned by the Power Broker, who is we don't actually know yet, but essentially, more than likely, he is a criminal overlord or underground boss who sells superpowers. He is funding the creation of new Super Soldier Serum by a Dr. Nagel, who somehow is able to crack the same code that Dr. Erskine had back in Captain America: The First Avenger. Nagel even says, when they confront him over his creation of this new serum, that he has perfected it. Instead of the serum turning the person into a huge bulking mass, They look the same as they did before, but they still have the enhanced strength, speed, durability, and endurance of a super soldier. In a not surprising move, Zemo, who has a big vendetta against super soldiers, murders Nagel in cold blood right before the entire lab is destroyed by the Power Broker's men to ensure that none of the secrets or the serum leaves that location. We also get a little bit more insight into the Flag Smashers when we see Carly and one of her partners use more violent and aggressive tactics to see their agenda to its end. They go and steal supplies from a recovery center for people that return from the blip, believing that these supplies should be for everybody, not just for those that were affected and weren't here for 5 years. Whether they are right or whether they could be doing this diplomatically is a different conversation. Carly, once they steal these resources, sets off a bomb in the building while there are still people there, and that shocks her partner, who understands that this is their goal but isn't trying to hurt people like that. Now that we've talked about the plot a little bit, let's go into what I liked and what I didn't like about this episode. I really enjoyed the dialogue in this episode, and though I've seen some critiques of it here and there, I tend to think that these characters have all grown significantly since we saw them in Civil War, which Bucky, Sam, Sharon, Zemo, that's the last time they were all in the same space. So they're all going to act a little bit differently. They've all been affected by life going on, by the blip. So it stands to reason that they have changed as characters. And like I said, I've seen some criticism that they seem a little out of character. To me, they seem to have grown. Zemo speaks kind of like a quasi-Shakespearean mustache-twirling villain, which I love. And Sam and Bucky's constant banter, like we saw in the first 2 episodes, is still here intact, and it's pretty great. As I just mentioned, I really do love the evolved characterization of all of our 4 main protagonists here, Bucky, Sam, Zemo, and Sharon, but specifically Sharon Carter, who is now a badass. She does not care what you have to say about how she gets things done because nobody has really cared about her for a couple of years now. She can't contact her parents. The Avengers haven't been around. She has been on her own and doing fine. I really did like the pacing of this episode. I felt that there was a good balance between the action scenes and the more character-driven scenes, and neither felt too short or overstayed its welcome. So you have this good balance between the action scenes and the character development, but also the length of those scenes tends to work in the show's favor. And of course, I loved Madripoor. It's a really cool place that has a lot of potential for storytelling, so to see it introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in this way was fun. They kind of really nailed the tense, dark nature of Madripoor, because this is a place where, as we see in the show, and as comic book fans have known, pretty much everybody there is armed to the teeth no matter what. One wrong word, one wrong look, you could be mowed down by 100 bullets a second. We have a scene in the episode where Sam, Bucky, Sharon, and Zemo are walking out and they are attacked by a number of people, and it's just this rising tensions where you just keep hearing guns clicking, getting ready to go, and then it all just happens. It's a great scene that really conveys how chaotic Madripoor can be, and I was really excited to see that. Now, what I don't like. The story progression. I felt like a lot happened, but not a lot happened. So we have a lot of story going forward, we have a lot of exposition, a lot of new characters introduced, but by the end of it, we're not really that much closer to Sam and Bucky's investigative goals. They haven't learned much of anything new outside the Power Broker was doing this, which they kind of knew already. There are a lot of new characters in this episode. We get the formal introduction of Zemo back into the MCU. Sharon Carter comes back. We meet a woman named Selby who owns this club. We meet the scientist Nagel, who has his whole speech to give without break. The number of new characters in this episode is a lot. They kind of throw a lot at us. 2 of them are gone by the end of the episode, so it somewhat feels inconsequential. All of these characters that were introduced were there kind of for a one-off, and that's fine, but in the grander scheme of the series, we were just kind of treading water in this episode. There was a small aside in this episode that featured the new Captain America, John Walker, looking into this super soldier flag smasher incident that Bucky and Sam and Zemo are trying to get to the bottom of. We know that this new Captain America and his partner will come head to head with Bucky and Sam and presumably Zemo at some point here. But I really don't feel the episode did a good enough job of giving us enough of Captain America. We got about, I'd say, a minute. He kind of goes in, he tries to be intimidating for a minute to get some intel, it doesn't work, and then that's about it. It was fine for what it was, I just felt like there could have been more, should have been more. And then my last issue with the episode, which is small but I think kind of significant, is the episode is called Power Broker. As I mentioned, the Power Broker was brought up in episode 2 and he is mentioned a lot in episode 3. The Power Broker's machinations are directing a lot of the plot in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But we haven't seen him yet, or her, or whoever the Power Broker is. I kind of feel like it was burying the lead a little bit by calling this episode the Power Broker, because we don't meet the Power Broker, so... But again, it's a small thing in the grand scheme of the show. Now that I've talked about some things I liked about the episode and some things I wasn't so hot on, I want to talk about a few of the theories I had for the show as we move forward based on what we saw this week. In the most likely column is that Zemo will probably betray Bucky and Sam at some point. In what context? I don't know. He's kind of got his own machinations. He has his own agenda, his own plans. Zemo seems like a character that is a few steps ahead of everyone else. And it was like that in Civil War, obviously, but there were a few things about Civil War's plot that didn't really make a lot of sense if you dig a little bit deeper with that, but that's a whole different conversation. Here, we get to see the fleshing out of Zemo as a tactical mastermind. So I have a feeling that there will be a point where he will get one over on Sam and Bucky, presumably, possibly, without them even knowing it. I think that Captain America will at some point partner up with the Flag Smashers. If you've read the comics, if you know the history of John Walker, who in the comics is a US agent, he started working initially with supervillains to create fake attacks that he could stop and claim glory for. It was a way to bump up his own reputation while he was trying to make a name for himself as a superhero. Captain America found him out, exposed him, and that's how we got John Walker introduced into the Marvel comic universe. I don't know if the show intends to take Walker down that dark of a path, but it would make sense. He might be looking for a way to one-up Sam and Bucky, possibly by finding super soldier serum, since he does not have that serum in his veins currently. He may be looking for an edge and work with the enemy to eventually beat them, fight fire with fire, if you will. I also think that he may have been working with them the whole time, but that is less likely than he will at some point approach them. I don't currently think that they are working together, but it's a very good possibility that John Walker will at some point betray his own convictions and values to become the Captain America he believes he needs to be. Those are my thoughts on The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 3, streaming on Disney+. It was an okay episode. I think probably the weakest of the 3 that we've seen so far from this show. Even though there was a lot of action, a lot of new characters thrown in, a lot of exposition, it just kind of felt middle of the road, and that's unfortunate after the first 2 episodes were so much fun. I'd love to hear what you thought about the episode down in the comments below. Definitely make sure to, if you haven't, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Jay Anything.